Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 2025 How to Stand Out to Colleges seminar. We look forward to having an eye-opening, informative session today with our speakers. My name is Hannah Wang, and I am the co-president of Michigan Youth Empowerment Foundation's Youth Leadership Committee. I'm currently a rising senior at International Academy Oakma, and my current major interest is biochemistry.
Hello, my name is Harrison Wu. I'm the other co-president of Michigan Youth Empowerment Foundation Youth Leadership Committee, and I attend Bloomfield Hills High School, and the current major that I'm interested in is mechanical engineering.
Hi, my name is Michelle Zhang. I'm the Vice President of the Michigan Youth Empowerment Foundation Youth Leadership Committee, and I'm a rising senior at Rochester Adams High School. My current major interest is statistics, and we will be your host for this event.
Michigan Youth Empowerment, founded in 2016, is a 501c3 nonprofit organization dedicated to empowering students with the tools and knowledge necessary to succeed in the 21st century. Our program is designed to foster students' interest in STEAM, leadership, and community, helping to bridge the gap between academics and real-world technological applications. Our initiative focuses on leadership, community impact, and early career exploration.
The YLC, which stands for the Youth Leadership Committee, is a group of high school students passionate about making an impact in their community. We have partnerships with libraries and other community centers in hosting STEM classes and other events. If anyone wants to apply, applications will be open later in fall. Our MYE Beat website stands for Be Entertained at All Times. This website, run by the YLC, started during COVID in 2020 in order to entertain readers through hard times. Please feel free to check it out.
Now, without further ado, we will welcome our three speakers for this seminar, Oliva Xu, Mingjun Kim, and Jessica Wu, who will be talking a bit about themselves before we get started.
Hello, everyone. My name is Olivia, and I am going to be attending the California Institute of Technology this fall. Some of the extracurriculars I participated in during my high school career included research during my sophomore and junior year. I think this was the most impactful one, as well as MYE throughout all 4 years of high school, and I was the co-president last year for YLC.
Hey everyone, my name is Mingjun Kim. I went to the International Academy Central as well, uh, and I will be at Brown University in the fall. Some of the extracurriculars that I participated was mostly a lot of music stuff, some violin. I was also very involved in school activities like Mirror Corps, Science Olympiad, biology club, things like that. And then I also dabbled around in some teaching with some violin students and English and all that stuff. So good to meet you all.
Hi guys, I'm Jessica Wu. I am from Troy High School in Michigan, and next year I'll be attending the University of Rochester this year for their BSMD program, which is basically an 8-year program with a guaranteed spot in the medical school. Throughout high school, I was most notably a 3-time NASA research intern, where I worked with their AI ML group as well as their biology group. And then I was also co-president or co-founder of Science Olympiad, my guidance chapter, Biology Competitions Club, BioBuilder, and I was also on a team that worked on an MRI diagnosis, AI ML nonprofit.
Thank you, everyone, for the introductions. We will now move on to a quick overview of today's agenda. We have 4 main topics to cover. First is how did you decide your major? Then we'll shift to how did you prepare throughout high school for college applications, where our speakers will share their experiences with extracurriculars and summer involvement. Third, we'll explore the college application process itself, including the Common App, application timelines, interviews, essays, and general tips. Finally, we'll wrap it up with What I Wish I Knew, where our speakers will share advice for incoming high schoolers and students beginning their applications. At the end, we will have a Q&A session, so please feel free to use the Q&A function as our speakers present. We'll make sure to address your questions then. If you're new to Zoom webinars, this slide explains the Q&A function. The Q&A function is right next to the raise hands icon, and you can choose to ask questions anonymously or with your name. We will begin with our first topic. How did you decide on your major? While choosing a college is certainly important, selecting a major is just as significant. It shapes your classes, internships, and even your future career path. Let's hear from our speakers about how they decide on their majors, starting with our first speaker, Olivia.
So I will be studying physics with a focus on astrophysics in college. During high school, I wasn't really sure what major I was going to choose. I was between physics, engineering, and business. So to really decide, I kind of did activities in all three subjects. So I participated in DECA, which is a business competition. I was in physics club, and I also did biomedical engineering research during high school. So through all these activities, I kind of narrowed down what I really liked about each thing, and I finally decided that I would be studying physics, specifically gravitational waves and gravity in college. I didn't fully decide until the summer before senior year, so keeping my options really helped me consider which one I really wanted to do. And yeah.
Physics sounds awesome. It was so interesting to hear the thought process behind your passion. Thank you for sharing. Now let's hear from our next speaker, Mingjun, and his choice in the upcoming year.
Yeah, so in the upcoming year, I'll be most likely concentrating in computational biology with the double in music as well. So my path was a little bit unsure when college app season was going on. I wasn't fully dedicated to the medical path. Now I am fully immersed in the pre-med field, but back then I wasn't exactly sure if I just wanted to pursue computational biology as like a research career, or if I wanted to go into med. So in my early high school years, I considered molecular bio, tried some wet labs and things like that. But then through clubs like MYRCOR, which we'll talk about later, I found that computational bio was definitely more rewarding personally, and I saw a lot of potential in the things that could be discovered in the field. And then my second half, music. Been doing music for a very long time now. And for most of my musical career, I've been playing the music notes in front of me in an orchestra setting, an ensemble setting, etc. But through founding like a music improv club, and working at the hospital as a music therapy volunteer, I was able to kind of stray away from just reading and playing what's in front of me, and I could put more creative insight into it, doing improvs, taking song requests, and things like that. So that's why I love the intersection at the hospital, both physically and spiritually treating patients.
A major in computational biology and music sounds both fascinating and diverse. I really admire how you're able to express yourself through not only the sciences but also the arts. Thank you so much for sharing your journey with us. Now, to conclude, our final speaker, Jessica, will share her major and her story.
Hi, yeah. So I am very similarly majoring in computational biology like Minjun. So and I'm also taking a double major in public health for health, behavior, and society. I really got into science because I took AP biology a year early through my school, and I connected really well with my teacher there, who really pushed me to apply to a U.S. Department of Agriculture research funding grant, and that really grew my interest in biology. And then I applied to and got into a NASA Gene Lab for high school's internship with a specific focus on omics-based bioinformatics research and computational biology. And through that, I was really able to explore the whole entire field of computational biology. And I won first place at the NASA training research competition and was given a government subsidized trip to DC for ASGSR conference, where I also won first place. And then through that, I really wanted to continue to grow my computational biology knowledge. So I became the Guidus founder and Guidance chapter founder and president at my school, where I was able to teach other people how to create their research projects and volunteer to teach during the summer. One of the big reasons why I chose the University of Rochester is that it's one of the only few schools that has computational biology as a major. So I think that through this major, I can continue to grow and become a physician through the program and continue to work with incorporating technology into healthcare.
Thank you so much for sharing with us. I truly admire your determination and clarity in choosing your path. It's so inspiring and it encourages me to stay dedicated in finding my own passion. With that, I'll now hand it over to Harrison, who will be leading us into topic 2.
Thank you very much, Hannah. Our next topic not is the next step from when you think about what you want to major in. So our panelists will describe some ways they prepared beforehand in high school for their major.
So for clubs, these are the 4 clubs I did in high school. I had physics, cross country, fiddlers, which is a part of orchestra, and then DECA, which is a business competition. I only chose to do 4 clubs because doing any more than that would honestly take up far too much of my time, especially since for DECA and cross country, they do require a lot of time every single day. In freshman year, I did try out multiple clubs though, and then I narrowed down which clubs I enjoyed the most during sophomore year, just so I can focus my attention on my favorite activities. For example, I also did chemistry club during freshman year, but ultimately chose to drop it in sophomore year. So I think it's really important to maybe experiment a bit in freshman year, but really focus your attention on a few specific clubs or activities that you really enjoy for the next few years of your high school, just to make sure you aren't spreading yourself too thin.
Yeah, I definitely agree with a lot of the points that Olivia said. It's important to not spread yourself thin and put yourself out, but also balancing putting yourself out there at the same time. Personally, I've highlighted 3 of my main clubs or involvements, which was Guidus, so that's the research part, the school club aspect of my high school career. Music, whether that be orchestra, therapy, improv, anything like that. And then finally community service. And so what I think is important is finding that balance between types of clubs. There was the competitive ones like research, and then also the ones I really enjoyed doing, always like music, and then community service. A lot of people say that nowadays being well balanced isn't the key to college admissions, but I would like to actually say that there's always a place for well balanced people, and enjoying everything you do is definitely the big thing here. And trying to get yourself out there, put yourself at risk of failing, and maybe you do fail. But it's okay, you get back up and you try again. Being in an uncomfortable situation definitely gives you growth as a character. So, for example, like through my community service, I was the captain for the Neighborhood House Youth Executive Board. We pretty much supplied food, clothing, financial assistance to those in need in the community. And through that position, I was able to enhance my leadership skills, public speaking skills, and just have an better view of what I wanted to do, which is give back to the community in just more ways than one.
And on top of my previous extracurriculars I've highlighted, I've also taken BioBuilder Synthetic Biology Research Team, which was like a club through my high school that I was able to co-found, which is like where we would do research and then we would publish it in a paper. And I also did HOSA and forensics. And I think that I would like to make sure that these clubs are highlighted because I didn't have like or I didn't have any titles or like leadership positions for the last 2. However, I think that I really learned from them. So I think that having more impact would matter more than like having a title or a position. So definitely through HOSA, that's where I really learned how to advocate for healthcare systems and for patients. So I think that those have better kind of examples that you can use during your college essays and interviews.
So these are some of the extracurriculars I participated in outside of school. So first of all, I have biomedical engineering research. This was done through, well, I competed in the International Science and Engineering Fair, which is a science competition where you present a research project. I was obviously in the category of biomedical engineering, and this experience really let me explore whether I want to do pure scientific research or if I wanted to do something more engineering based. It also gave me my first insight into what research looks like outside of a school environment, where the closest thing to research we had was doing school labs where we weren't really exploring much, we were just following directions. So I really enjoyed this experience, and I met a lot of people who I still know today who are really passionate about science just as I am. And this really helped me determine if I wanted to do business versus science as well. And it made me lean a bit more towards business. My specific research was on creating devices to monitor heart sounds in patients that might be at risk for heart disease. It was a very eye-opening experience, and I really enjoyed that. And the good thing about ISEF is you can really explore anything you want. They have so many categories, and you can, it has a very low barrier of entry as well. The second activity I had was MYE, so I did a lot of volunteering and community service throughout all 4 of my high school years. Not only was this helpful for my application just because it was showing that I put myself out there and I want to make an impact in a community, but I also just really enjoyed it as an activity. I especially loved just going to libraries and interacting with the kids and teaching them fun facts and doing fun activities like that. And the experience also helped me develop leadership and outreach skills, which I believe just helped me in general, as well as in fields like research, where you need to be really good at talking and communicating and collaborating with other people, especially peers. And then the last activity I did was SSP, the summer science program. I was specifically in the astrophysics camp. This is a 5.5 week research camp where you go to a university and you work with professors with other high school students on a specific research project. Mine was on finding or the orbital path of an asteroid in space using our own observations. So this really cemented that I wanted to do research in college, and it showed me a lot of aspects of research that I wouldn't have known about otherwise, like how you can't really predict a lot of things in research, and we had a lot of unexpected things happen, like the weather was constantly changing, how long we could go for our observations. We had observations we didn't expect and things like that. And it really gave me a good view of what research would be like in college. So these are my 3 most important extracurriculars in deciding not only what college I would go to, but also what major I would choose.
Yeah, definitely great points. I have to actually, add on to that research part. I definitely agree about how research outside of the school gets you experiences that following directions in a school lab can't really get you. You definitely get to experience those high stake, high risk, high reward moments, as well as just developing how to think in that scientific way where there really you can't search it up on Google. You can't search up the lab answers on Google to find what you're looking for. You have to really go and dig for it. And coming back to how that was really important to me, and the biggest thing through MYRE, which was the computational biology research, and also just wet lab research in general, is that it gives you a topic to talk about in your college essays, especially ones that ask why you're very much interested in going to that specific school. You don't want to always just say like, oh, the sports team is great, or I like the campus. Like those are good reasons. It's just not, unique reasons really that they're looking for. So if you did participate in research, and you don't have to get published, I wasn't necessarily published in any of these research um, experiences, you can still talk about how you've had this experience and why a specific professor in that school, it might help you expand on your experiences and help you engage more with the things that you actually like learning about on your own time. So yeah, like MYRE, there's some competitions that I was able to win best research awards with, and that just kind of helps you fuel the motivation to get through it. Another big one for me was Genes in Space. I was a finalist last year, and I would say that a lot of the research experience I had prior to that helped me come up with that proposal to send to the competition. If you haven't really been in a research area, it's kind of hard to figure out what scientists are looking for, where the gaps are. So that definitely comes in handy in terms of preparing for things like that. And then at the Boston conference, the International Space Station, RDC, that further enhanced what I learned in the lab and try to make me think about what could happen in unfamiliar places in Dell space. And then my second half, music therapy, like I mentioned before, it was definitely an eye-opening experience for me. When people say hospital volunteering, a lot of people um, might do things for a lot of hours. They might stack a lot of hours, but the actual meaning behind what they're doing might not be as significant. And really, it's the people that make volunteering special. The people that I meet through music therapy, whether it's the patients' families, doctors, nurses, staff, those are the people who I can see are benefiting directly from my services. And that's why it just really made that motivation within me even stronger to help people and to be compassionate towards others because you have no idea what's going on. But one act like playing music for them just could have completely changed the trajectory of their day.
And then I really wanted to hit upon my medical receptionist job. It was my job that I had for 3 years, so it was extremely important to my application, especially because you need a lot of clinical experiences if you're going to apply to a BSMD program. So I was a volunteer at the medical office for 100 years, no, 100 years, for 100 hours, and then they offered me a job to work there part-time. And I feel like this is extremely important to be able to get patient interaction stories for interviews. Interviews is a huge part of the BSMD process. And I would be glad to like help anybody that in the future. But I feel like having a job in high school is extremely important to build up like credibility, as well as having like an extra like side like money for you to spend if you'd like. But I think that the most important part was that it introduced me to the administrative point of view of medicine. Medicine isn't always just like treating the patient itself, but it's also working within like the system that's already in place. So this is kind of like working with insurance companies and billing and coding and like customer care. And I feel like you won't be able to get those kind of experiences in a lot of like situations. So I think that my medical receptionist job definitely allowed me to explore that side. I also was really involved in NASA internships and research. It was definitely a really important part for me. I love space biology, same with Mingjun. So I think that I would like to highlight the importance of summertime experiences. We're going to be talking about this further on, but it gives you the opportunity to network with different scientists and different students from across the country. I feel like that those kind of things aren't really available in like your local school. So attending a summer program is extremely nice. It also allows you to extend to different opportunities. After my first NASA internship, I was offered a position to work on their AI ML group. And then after I worked and did some research for them, I was actually then offered another job to work on like right now on the Rodent Research 9 payload project. So I think that doing research and then publishing and then getting that kind of credibility and getting your work out there is kind of like a really rewarding experience. And I think that research really allows you to do that.
Thank you all. All the information about your choice in extracurricular is incredibly insightful. Now we have Olivia to explain general information to take into consideration when choosing advanced classes. Afterwards, we will have Mingjun to explain what the IB program is.
Yeah, so thank you for the introduction, Harrison. So for course selections, I think it's good to start planning during 8th grade, maybe during the middle to end of 8th grade, and make a vague 4-year plan of at least what kinds of classes you want to take. It's good to not be too restrictive with this because you can't predict everything. You might not get the classes you want, but it is a good idea to find what specific classes you're aiming for, maybe choose one or two each year that you know you definitely want to get on your schedule. So it's really good to do some research about what courses your school will have and figure out which ones you can take and which ones you want to take. It's also important to decide whether you want to take normal, honors, or AP classes. This will depend not only on how well you think you can do in that level of a course, but also how much time you have and a few other factors. For example, specific AP courses might be slightly harder, or if you're only interested in one topic, you might want to only do APs in that specific topic and choose easier classes for other topics so you have more time to focus on that specific class and things like that. It really impacts your GPA. For example, if you do bad in a AP class, your GPA will obviously show that, and colleges will see that you have a lower GPA compared to someone who might be taking an honors class or a normal class where they do better and they have a higher GPA. Of course, this is a bit of a balancing act because if colleges see that you only have normal classes but you have a super high GPA, they might take it as you not pushing yourself hard enough. So you really want to balance that and just see what you're capable of and what you think will challenge you during your academic career just enough where you're having a challenge, but you're not being entirely overwhelmed by it. For anyone who doesn't know, AP classes are basically like a kind of college course that you can take during high school. Minjun will talk about IBs a bit later, but generally APs are not limited by how many you can take outside of just whatever your school schedule is, and then you have to take an exam at the end of the year. Obviously, another thing to take into account for AP classes is that you can exchange them for college credit depending on what college get you are going to attend, as well as that exams at the end of the year do cost money. Of course, if you can get financial aid, that's always helpful, but you do want to take that financial cost into account as well. For dual enrollment, this is a bit of a less popular thing, but essentially this is where you're taking a college course through an actual college instead of an AP course. For dual enrollment courses, it does vary by school. For example, I went to Troy High and we offered two dual enrollment courses, Calc 3 and Linear Algebra. So for these classes, we had a teacher in our school that would teach them, so we didn't have to do online courses or go in person to the college. But for some other schools, you do have to do that. So just do some research into that and talk to your counselor because they will be a huge source of information, not only for dual enrollment, but just for course selection in general. If you want to take a dual enrollment course that's outside of the ones offered by your school, again, talk to your counselor about that. They're usually pretty lenient about what courses you can take for that. So just make sure to always talk to your counselor if you're unsure about these courses, and they're always there to help.
I can also touch on the IB classes now. So similar to AP classes, IB classes vary from school to school. For example, our school had a certain amount of IB classes that we had to take. Some were newly added, like global politics, psychology. But when I went through the program, it was very limited. We didn't have too much of a choice other than in between the sciences and history, things like that. But essentially, the IB stands for the International Baccalaureate Program. It is a program based in Europe. So a lot of schools in Europe and Asia, a lot of those schools will go through that program. And it's 4 years total with a focus on the last 2 years. The last 2 years, which is called the diploma program or DP, is when you're counting all of the IB assignments that you do towards the final IB diploma. And the IB diploma is completely separate from the regular high school diploma. You can get the high school diploma without getting your IB diploma. Usually you won't get the IB diploma if you didn't get your high school diploma. But it's very helpful for those who want to study internationally. And also, even within domestic colleges, you can use the IB classes, similar to AP classes, as college credit. So how it's scored is a little bit different. So you're going to have to check individually what courses are accepted in what college. But essentially, it is that higher level learning where most of the courses are actually continued through 2 years. Your junior and senior year, you'll be taking mostly the same classes, and it just goes much more in depth than usual AP classes. But I guess that makes up for not having dual enrollment at our school. So I'll talk about that a little bit more later when it comes to my specific course selections.
Thank you, Olivia and Mingju, for explaining considerations. Now we will have each panelist go more in depth on each advanced class they took.
So for me, in ninth grade, I didn't take these classes in school, but I did take the exams, which is something you can do, but it's based off of the school. So again, that's something you have to talk to your counselors about. But I took the AP Chinese and AP Physics 1 exams in ninth grade. In 10th grade, I had AP US History, AP Calc BC, and AP Physics C. That's E&M and mechanics. And then 11th grade, chemistry, AP language, economics, which is micro and macroeconomics, statistics, and then I took Calc 3, which is dual enrollment that year. 12th grade, AP CSA, that's computer science, AP environmental science, psychology, US government, literature, and then I took the other dual enrollment course we had, which was linear algebra. For me, I focused on having a relatively even level of how challenging my courses were. For example, for me personally at least, I found AP US history pretty challenging. So even though, same with AP Physics C, so even though I only had 3 APs that year, it took like basically the same amount of energy and it was just as hard as the AP courses I took in my other years. For example, senior year, most of my courses are generally considered easier ones, so it wasn't as challenging, even though it looks like there are more APs. So I kind of focused on getting courses that I thought would make it an even amount of challenging, yeah, equally challenging courses for each of my 4 years, as well as focusing on APs I enjoyed. For example, I chose physics over biology because I'm not personally interested in doing biology in college, so I didn't take AP biology.
And I'll be walking through my course schedule. So in ninth grade, just like as overall, all my classes I took during school. And I really tried to get as much class rigor as possible. I know that my counselor personally helped a lot with that. She recommended me like more difficult classes, to try and get me to, like boost up my course rigor for college applications. So if you can handle the kind of class rigor, I would definitely recommend it because it shows like a lot of growth and you're able to like kind of grow as a learner and a study like student. So in ninth grade, I took AP human geography, and I think that as a new student, your first AP classes is always going to be the hardest, whether you take that in ninth grade, 10th grade, 11th grade, or 12th grade. It's definitely a jump from a high school course. So I would be really wary about starting really heavy on. And then I took a lot of science heavy courses in 10th grade, especially because I wanted to get that kind of experience so that I could apply it towards my extracurriculars. I think that was a really smart idea to like take like AP environmental science in 10th grade as it was a lighter class. In 11th grade, I took AP Lang, AP Econ, Stats, Psychology, and Physics C. So that was 7 different AP exams that year. So it was definitely a heavy course load, but I absolutely loved it, and there were some easier classes in there. So as long as like you spend a lot of time working and like studying, I usually love studying in the library. So highly recommend. And then in 12th grade, I took AP US Gov, AP Comp Gov, Linear Algebra, and Calc 3 Lit dual enrollment. AP World / Euro History. Our school kind of combines the two classes together. And then AP Literature and AP Chinese. I know a lot of people take AP Chinese earlier on, and like if you're prepared for that, go for it. Personally, I wasn't like super good at Chinese, so I definitely highly recommend the class because you're able to kind of grow upon where you're at. And I know a lot of people don't like to take the class during school, but I highly recommend.
So yeah, this looks a little different. Um, this is the IB schedule. In terms of where a lot of the classes are located, you can see that 11th and 12th grade is where they're stacked. During 9th and 10th grade, IB students are mostly in the MYP program, which is also called the middle years program. That does not go towards the IB diploma. And I would say most of those classes are just regular high school honors level classes. But then once you get into 11th grade, that's when all of this starts counting towards your DP. And there's an option to graduate with just a couple of DP courses and get just some DP certification. My school required us to all at least work towards the IB diploma. And the IB diploma is more or less structured. We didn't have the same flexibilities as the AP schedule because we had to take a language for 4 years. Well, and definitely the last 2 years. We had to take some type of humanities course, whether that's like history, global politics. You had to take math, you had to take literature. And in our school, we had to take literature HL, which I'll explain in a little bit. And then we're also left with two spots, kind of whatever subject you want, but it has to be a science plus one. And for those, I chose bio and chem. Now, to the right of each subject name is either HL or SL, and HL stands for higher level, while SL stands for standard level. You're only allowed to take up to 4 HLs because they have a way to score them separately. And so even if you wanted to take 5 HLs, I don't think that's allowed in the entire program at all. So I chose 4 as literature, chem, math, analysis, and bio. Overall, this schedule gave me a very balanced education. If not, I probably wouldn't have taken history for all 4 years or maybe taken French for all 4 years, but because it kind of pushed us to stretch our boundaries in terms of how to create high quality work in in an area that you're not familiar with, I think the IB program did it very well. The HL classes are mostly the ones that give college credit, although some colleges take SL credit. Grading is out of a scale of 7, 1 being the worst, 7 being the best. An average score is usually around a 4. And the way we're scored in the IB kind of translates to the actual high school itself, but it's a lot more lenient. 4 being average actually would get you an average score of like an 80 or an 85 in class. If you're achieving 6s and 7s mostly in your work, you would be getting mostly 90s, 90 pluses. Um, so all of that, usually your high school will have a system to convert in between. To point out some highlights, I'd say that math is kind of like an interesting one. You can't really tell what math AAHL really means. Or where in other schools it's like calculus, pre-calculus, whatever. But 11th grade math AA, which is math analysis and approaches, higher level, includes pre-calc, trig, some vectors, things like that. In 12th grade, this content expands to rest of calc, a little bit of linear algebra, a little bit of just extended concepts from the 11th grade. So all this, like I said before, is a connected program, but math in and its of itself is more unique that it kind of combines high school and college courses kind of in one class.
Thank you very much. And while school courses are incredibly important, now we will have each panelist discuss how they demonstrate engagement over their summers. What- there-
Okay, so for me, I didn't really do much during my ninth grade summer. Well, I had cross-country practice because we're expected to do that for the entire summer as members of the team. But other than that, I wasn't really doing much to work towards, I guess, a specific major. I wasn't doing any research or anything like that. The summer 10th grade summer, I did a Girls Who Code 2-week data science camp. So for this, we went to Detroit and we would just take a library of data, and we would filter it using SQL and visualize it through graphs and charts and things like that in order to get some more understandable knowledge out of that raw data. It was a really interesting experience. I really enjoyed learning how different coding languages are specialized for different uses and how we were able to read that kind of data. In 11th grade, this was the biggest thing I had for summer engagement. This was the summer science program I mentioned earlier, where we were doing research on observing asteroids and calculating all of that. I found this through, I believe, a upperclassman who had participated in it, or they applied to it and they found it really interesting. So yeah, for Girls Who Code, I learned about that through my older sister since she used to be involved in it as well. For the summer science program, I think this was my biggest one for determining my major, like I said earlier. Um, some more details about it. It does have a pretty early application process. So all of these things, if you really want the more competitive summer engagement things, you want to start applying for them pretty early or start researching them pretty early just to get a chance to do those activities. But I think it's definitely worth it if you do get in. Additionally, I was also doing MYE throughout all of the summer, so I was working on planning different events and seminars like this one in the summer, as well as planning classes and things at local libraries and different events like that. So that was all of the summer engagement I did.
Yeah, that sounds excellent. For me, I wanted to kind of add on to that, that in your ninth grade summer, especially, it's okay to take things easy. It's your first summer after high school. I personally went to South Korea, see some family, got my wisdom teeth popped out. That was great. Wasn't. But it's a time to relax before things start getting a little bit harder and harder and harder. And a lot of the experiences that you'll have in the summer, for example, like the Miracle Summer Camp that Jessica also has done, or just getting more involved in research, things like that build after you take some more courses in high school. You can't really jump straight into a research lab when you've never taken a bio or a chem course, or at least it'd be a little bit more difficult too. So it's definitely okay to take your time in terms of getting into those things. Other than the Mucor summer camp, which I took so I was able to teach my guidance at my high school, um, I never really applied to any summer camps other than that. So that's kind of not my area of expertise. But my 11th grade summer, I took to prepare for the conference in Boston through the Gene and Space program. Was working with uh, some postdocs at U Chicago to put some like a proposal together with blood clotting in space. And after that, we took some time to publish on JEI, which is Journal of Emerging Investigators, and it was kind of in like a special edition for the Gene in Space work. So that's definitely something that all high schoolers can look into, even though if it's not like university level publications, it's still some evidence that, hey, you put in the work, you've gotten some experience in research. For those of you guys who are planning on submitting a supplemental, which is either a music supplemental, arts portfolio, I think there's like a maker's portfolio as well. Anything that shows off some other activity or talent that's not very much represented in your application, 11th grade summer is the time to get that together. So for me, I spent a lot of time practicing and recording my music supplementals. Both of them, so I played two pieces in total. I think it was like 10 to 15 minutes in terms of the range, but I spent some time practicing on violin. Recording took a while because you have to have multiple takes until you're really happy with your result. And in terms of how that helps in college, I'd say that if you do think that your music or your art or your work in some other way can contribute to who you are as a person, I would recommend it. A lot of the schools that I got into actually were the ones that I sent this in, like Brown or like Cornell, things like that. So um, this is definitely the best time to do it. I wouldn't do it during senior year because then it gets too busy. So I'd get all the recording done in 11th grade summer, going into 12th grade, so you don't have to worry about that.
Yeah, of course. So, for summer engagement, summers are really important to me. I feel like you have like 3 months to do whatever you want, so like might as well take advantage of it. In the ninth grade summer, I did a program through MirrorCore. I know Minjun talked about this before, but they have summer camps every single year, and they're open from like students from like eighth grade all the way until 12th grade. So they like I did the one that was on computational biology, but they have our programming and biotech and DNA analyzing. So I think that was a really important opportunity for me. And I became a Guidus chapter founder afterwards, which anybody can do. So I would definitely recommend that. And then in 10th grade, I did the NASA GLab for High Schools internship. I touched a bit about this beforehand, but 27 students nationwide were chosen. So it's like a 3% acceptance rate. However, recently, actually this year, they've increased the number of students to 800. So definitely next summer, if you're interested in anything space biology or medicine, definitely apply. It's a super good opportunity. So I found it through a friend who was a previous intern. And when I was applying, I approached it with the focus on sharing computational biology knowledge with my Guidus chapter. I tried to connect both opportunities and help like advocate for myself. And then in 11th grade, I was very, very busy. That's the summer before college apps as well. So I definitely had to make some sacrifices and made some like prioritizations. So I worked at Wayne State University School of Medicine as a researcher in their cancer biology lab. And there I like did it through cold emailing. I only sent one email, so I think that cold emailing through like a very certain process is really important, and it like allows you to get opportunities easier. I found this researcher through a friend who worked with him a previous year, and I researched breast cancer anti-apoptotic genes. Um, and during that same time, I worked full time. So I was there for 9 hours every single day, for 5 days a week for 7 weeks. But during that time, I also was doing my NASA AI ML internship. So I found that through the NASA Gene Lab network, and I'm still doing research with them. But I worked on mouse retina after they were chucked up into space. Super interesting. And then I was also a Global Health Leaders Conference student speaker. I applied. It's a 9% acceptance rate, but they like accept a lot of students from like across the world. You can like basically listen to different lecturers speak, and then you can also apply to be a student speaker, and get published on like the Johns Hopkins University like website. So I found this through a friend who did it previously, and then I used it to highlight my space research. And I think that it's really important to connect with upperclassmen or definitely people that have like gone through high school because there are a ton of opportunities out there. And I definitely think that everyone should take advantage of their summers.
Thank you guys for sharing your preparations and activities throughout high school, both in school and during summers. They show a lot of hard work and dedication, and it's very impressive. Now to move on to the next section about the actual college application process, our speakers will now briefly introduce the Common App.
I was muted. Okay. So the Common App is one of the many portals that you can use for college applications. We're touching on it today because it's the one that most people do use, but there are other programs that I would like to highlight. First of all, there's the Squire a coalition application. So that focuses on underserved, low income, and disadvantaged students. It's very similar to the Common App, but like the interface is a little different. And I feel like it's like good if you're within those kind of categories. Also, QuestBridge is really nice. They allow you to kind of match to a school if you're a finalist. However, if you match to like one of your schools, you don't really have an option. You're kind of like stuck into that school. So it really depends on like how much you're willing to like sacrifice your like autonomy between like choosing between different options. And there's also school-specific application processes. Like MIT has their own portal, and the UC, which is like the University of like California like system, and then also Georgetown has their own application portal. I feel like you really have to make sure that you figure out which of these schools you're going to apply to first, because the your like recommenders have to like submit it separately, and it's like a lot of work on them. So if you could like let them know early beforehand, it's really important. But on the Common App, so these are the things that are required for the Common App. Education, so you have to put in your GPA and your senior year courses. I know somebody previously asked why you would need to have APs in senior year. It's because you want to like show that you're still working really hard. You don't want to like drop off in senior year, and although you won't get you won't really have the AP scores on there, like they'll still get like your transcript, and they'll still you can still use those kind of like credits. But some of them also require transcripts, and you can also put 5 honors or awards on there. There's not really space to like expand on it, so make sure that they're kind of concise. Have test scores like the SAT, the ACT, your AP scores. As more university or like top tier universities like Ivy Leagues, I think like 7 out of the 9 now have removed test optional. So it's definitely important to keep those scores on there for the scores that do require for the schools that do require them. And for your activities, there are up to 10 activities. You don't have to use all of them, but definitely if you do have 10 that you think are meaningful to you, I would definitely use that. There's an 150 word character limit for each, so make sure that you're using that very wisely. And personally, I combined a lot of my activities together. So for I have like one activity be like volunteering, and I have like 4 different clubs in there. I think that trying to like put in what you did in high school is really important. And then you have a personal statement. It's 650 words. We're going to be touching on that further, like later on in the seminar. But they have like a list of prompts that you can choose from. And during this section, you can also put down additional information. This is like just like a free reign, put whatever you want in it. So like if you have any extenuating circumstances that really kind of harmed or like hurt your like learning process, you can definitely put it in there. I personally put like extra awards and extra activities in that section. So I have like a lot of my biology awards under there because I couldn't fit it in like the other sections. And also there's supplemental materials. You can do this through after you submit the Common App, then you can go into each school's portal and upload like an art supplement, a music supplement, or a research supplement. I personally submitted my research paper or abstract to every single school that allowed it. And I think that really showed them like what I actually did rather than just like what I said I did. And then also you can send your recommendation letter request through Common App itself. Just basically attach like their email onto one of the schools, and then you can basically move the recommendation letter to all the other schools, so you don't have to like keep on requesting it from the same teacher.
So the timeline. If you guys are incoming seniors, the timeline's already begun. Hopefully you've been doing some of these steps. But by the end of junior year, I would highly recommend that you kind of have an idea of who your recommenders are going to be. A lot of teachers have policies where you're not allowed to contact them about recommendations letters until a specific date. Sometimes that's September, sometimes that's before summer. You need to check their policy, got to make sure you're on top of things. But this is the time when you're thinking, okay, in the past year or past 2 years, which teacher have I had the best connection with? Who can speak for my character, my accomplishments, and just who I am as a person? And so you want to know who those people are first, and then figure out what they usually want from you to write a good rec letter. That might be a brag sheet, or a resume that they kind of reference to give you the best letter possible. Now, in the summer after your junior year, you definitely want to start building that college list. Where are you going to consider to apply? And don't worry, this might change over summer, or even as you're applying. Some schools might not resonate as much to you, and you're like, okay, well, I can put my effort in writing other essays instead of this school. Um, have a good reason. That kind of goes off of what I just said. But if you don't really want to go to that school, like even if you get in, if you're like, I'd rather just go to some other school, right? Then you don't have to apply. right? You don't have to apply to every top 20 university. You don't have to apply to all the UCs or anything like that. Just really make sure you want to go to where you're applying and believe in yourself, right? This is the time to put yourself out there. Worst they could say is no, as a lot of people say. Um, so it's worth a shot. If you have a dream school, if you have a reach school, just go for it. Now, throughout the summer, this is when you're going to start writing that Common App essay, that 650 word essay that goes to every single college. This one you might want to have down good. Just because everyone's seeing it, and also this kind of sets the tone for the rest of your supplementals and the rest of how you come together. You want to put a lot of thought into it. I'd say that it will take a lot of edits. I personally took 8 or 9 edits on my personal statement about music therapy. And after all those edits, you still see things to change, but you start to learn to take a step back, focus on other things because you can never edit an essay enough. And I believe August 1st is usually the time when supplemental essays are released from the schools. A lot of the schools keep it pretty consistent every single year, but I know there's been a pretty big change with UMich, so you always want to make sure before you start writing, start going into it. But this is when you want to at least take a look at it, get your mind rolling. You don't have to start writing the supplementals right away. You don't need to be done by August 30th. You just want to start thinking about what you might write about. And so in the late summer, edit your personal statement. I'd have it done before school starts, just so that's one less major thing on your plate. And then in the fall, as always, continue working on your supplementals. When I say go for reach schools, by all means, it's a good thing, except don't stretch yourself too thin. Don't apply to 40, 50 schools if you can't write like 90 essays. And for the most people, you're not going to physically be able to write 90 essays, or at least 90 good quality essays. So keep that number manageable. I personally only applied to like 12 or 13 that needed supplemental essays, so that made the process a little bit better for me.
So I will be going over the different types of early admissions. Compared to regular admissions, the early admissions are due in the first 2 weeks of November generally, well, though it will vary depending on the school, compared to regular admissions, which are usually due late December to early January. There are three main types of early admissions, and then we'll go over rolling. So early decision, or ED, is a type of early admission where you can only apply to one of them. And if you get into a college ED, that means you have to go to that college. It is a legally binding agreement. So if you have like a dream school, you're definitely going to go there if you get in, that's a good time to apply ED, but it does restrict your ability to compare financial programs, or if you're iffy between two schools, it might not be best for you to apply ED because it is an extremely restrictive type of admission. For early action, this is just the normal early admission. You can submit multiple early action applications, and you can decide, you get to choose if you want to enroll or not, if you get admitted. So this gives you a bit more opportunity to compare things like financial aid or different programs in different schools. Restrictive early action is a type of early application where you can only submit one of them. So for some schools, especially the top schools, they do tend to do this because it makes you choose between whether you want to really apply to this school early or not. If you want, many people do early if they really want to go to a specific school, but if you don't think you're ready, you can always apply regular. One thing to take into account is, for example, the acceptance rate, which can be a bit higher for early, though there are some factors that play into that, like athletes and people who have like legacy and things like that. So do keep that in mind when you're deciding whether you want to apply early or late, or regular, I mean. Rolling admissions is the final type. This is basically where the earlier you apply, the earlier you will get your result back. So I know Michigan State University does rolling admissions, and you can submit rolling admissions at any time to the school before obviously you have to decide whether you're admitted or you want to go or not. And this is really useful if you want to just get some colleges over with because you know you'll be getting their admissions back. I know a lot of people do it for their safety schools, and you can submit multiple rolling admissions applications. So it is not a restrictive type of application.
Thank you. That was a very detailed and helpful explanation. Now that we get the idea of the application process and different types of applications, our speakers will explain more about comparing early and regular apps.
Yeah, so expanding upon what Olivia talked about, really the difference between early and regular apps is timing. Regular apps are usually due in the end of December, early January, usually. So that gives you a couple more months to work on things, while earlies are usually due early November, mid-November, dates like that. So you have an additional 2 months to work on your supplementals and get everything together. So what are some benefits to applying early? Well, first of all, if you have a dream college that's set, apply early decision. Now, notice how I said early decision, not early action. Early decision, because it's a legal contract, schools are going to want to get their yield rate up. And yield rate is just how many people who get in actually attend their school. And by putting people into early decision, you're guaranteeing X amount of spots as part of that yield rate. And colleges want to get that up so that their stats look better. So if you are applying as ED, then definitely make sure you have your financial situation checked beforehand. But this is where you actually do have a higher percent chance of actually getting into the school. Unfortunately, early action does not have those same benefits. Although the percentage is higher, it's usually because you have your sports kids, your D1, D2, D3 recruits, you have your legacies, your billionaire parents who donate 3 buildings to the school type of applicants coming into early action. So that higher number or that higher percentage might be a little bit misleading. So early decision is the way to go for dreams. Benefits, smaller application pool, but it is more competitive. And if you apply early, you get your decision early, then December through March, you're not going to worry when other people are worrying about what's going to happen to their future. So that's just good, less stress in general. And like I said again, higher early acceptance rates, but with the asterisk. Why you shouldn't apply early. So if your grades up to junior year have been a little bit more lacking than you'd like it to, and it doesn't actually show your ability to succeed in school, you might just want to wait for that first semester senior year grade to come out that actually proves that, okay, I know what I'm doing in school and I definitely want to continue this higher level education. This is usually sent to schools around December as well, so they'll get that, they'll consider it, and you might even want to leave a little note in your Common App additional info section about why the other years were a struggle. Maybe you're dealing with some health issues, family issues, anything like that. Simply essays aren't ready yet. I know a lot of my supplemental essays were finished in the month of December. So that is a reason. If you just aren't sure about your work, your quality of work is the best in November, just wait until December. And some general tips, pick based on programs, not just numbers. School might be top 20, maybe the school's like 15th place on US News, but you want to go into math and that math program is like 90th place. Do you really want to go into that school to go into that math program? Probably not. So you would want to look at what programs they're strongest in, and there's a lot of websites that give you information on what programs are the strongest at which schools. Quality over quantity, like I said, don't apply to 50 schools who can't handle it. Write good essays. Essays are really the key, even if the rest of your application might not be looking like the top 0.1%. Essays can get you through. Essays can create that story. And have a range, safeties, matches, reaches. If your reaches fail, just make sure you know where you might be able to fall back to and go to. So that's just good to have in the back of your mind.
And we all know that writing essays is an essential part of the application process. Now our speakers will elaborate about the essays and even share some pieces of their own essays.
So first of all, the personal statement or like the Common App essay is kind of the most important piece of writing you'll submit. It's going to a lot of different universities, and sometimes it's the only essay that they get. So you really want to show like your own personality. It's gonna be a 60 to 150 word essay that you can write about whatever you want. Personally, I would choose what to write first before like figuring out what prompts it matches with. We're really, really lucky because one of the prompts is literally just like write whatever you want. So you really have unlimited options. I would try to think about something that makes you're like yourself and makes you really unique, or specific experiences that you may have, whether they're mundane or like super life-changing. It's really important to try to create that kind of theme in your overall application. And you really want to figure out how this experience has really shaped you as a person. So try and determine where your values lie and where your passions are.
Okay, so for my essay, I'm sharing an excerpt from my Common App. As you can see, the topic I chose was to just share an essay on a topic of your choice just because it gave me more freedom to do whatever I wanted. And like Jessica said earlier, I definitely thought about what I was going to write before choosing a prompt just because it gives you more freedom to find what you really want to show to colleges. So, if we go to the next slide, we can see the excerpt. So for my essay, I chose to focus on a theme of collaboration and how a bunch of small changes and small impacts can build up to create something much larger and much grander. So I used this to connect to scientific research as well as other parts of my life. If you look at my final paragraph, I talk about how all the other activities I participate in have a really big emphasis, or they have aspects of them that show collaboration and teamwork. I also used a lot of like different science and physics references in mine just to show that this was something I found really that just to connect it back to my passion for physics. For example, I compared it to things like double pendulums and other experiments we ran during SSP. This entire essay is focused on my experience at SSP because it was my first experience with research in a more rigorous environment, and I used it to show character growth because this is obviously such a long essay. You want to show how whatever you're talking about has impacted you by showing a realization of the importance of collaboration. And I use this to emphasize how important this part of collaboration is to me as a character, and use it to connect to not only my academic interests, but also my hobbies and what I did outside of school, well, what I did in clubs and things like that, just to really connect everything in my life together through a single event. Um, in the actual writing process, I try to create a kind of circular structure to it. For example, I talk about how being an astronaut might seem lonely in my introductory paragraph, and then at the very end of my essay, I connect back to that idea just to show a bit more about character growth and also to give it a more cyclical structure to it.
I'll actually be sharing a part of my supplemental essays because I don't think anyone has touched on that. In terms of my common essay, it was on music therapy. It was more personal. So if you guys have any questions on how to shape it, just email me later. Um, so for this Brown supplemental essay, this one was really talking about your biggest joy. So apart from your academics, apart from who you are in a school setting, it was kind of like what maybe it's an extracurricular, maybe it's literally just a random hobby that you like. What is it that brings you joy? So this is an excerpt. Essentially, I kind of took a more creative approach to this, and I talked about the lack of something that gave me joy, and that was the lack of gravity, and how it just gave so many different prospects of research that you could do that's not able to be done on just a regular Earth lab. I also talked a little bit more about engaging with the global community, using Google Translate to talk to people in a conference that I just, had that language barrier within. And how seeking out those experiences uh, influenced me as both like a communicator and also how it impacted my research proposals and presentations and things like that. And then to kind of wrap it up, I definitely tried to bring it to some other aspects of my life, whether that be bird watching, which I used to enjoy, or listening to music, being part of music. I made sure to tie it back to Brown's vision and Brown's mission about being very much well balanced and creative and finding those things that set you apart from others. I would also say that for a lot of supplemental essays in general, you want to be creative. I'm sure people have heard a lot of essays about sports victories, sports losses, things like that. But if you can find a way to turn that into something that they read and they're like, wow, I didn't think about it like this, that could be the key to a successful supplemental essay. And always, for a lot of the schools, they love that interdisciplinary aspect. If you can start by talking about science, but lead to another topic that you actually found these same connections in, I'd say they definitely like seeing those, seeing how you might be able to use a wide array of their resources on campus.
I will then be discussing the classic community essay. So this is the prompt from Duke. We recognize that not fully fitting into a community or a place can be difficult. Duke values the effort, resilience, and independence that may require. Feel free to share with us circumstances in which you feel you are different and how that's influenced your experiences or identity. So everybody's gonna have to write like a community essay. This is an essay that I used for my University of Michigan application as well. So it definitely works, my essay. So I got into Duke and I also got a nearly a full ride merit from University of Michigan. So if you can get off to the next slide. Yes, okay. So in this essay, this is just like a small little excerpt of the very beginning and a line from the end. But I think that when you're thinking about how to approach your community essay, you definitely want to be kind of unique. I think that like a lot of people try to make like a broad community, like the Asian American community. But I think that trying to pinpoint like small unique things about your hometown or like your experiences can be a lot more valuable because it really shows like you as a person rather than just like a speck in front of like a huge group of people. So personally, I talked about the Cantonese community, and those that are like nearby Troy. You might recognize a restaurant called Hall Ting. And then, so I definitely used that as my community and explained how I feel like I connected with it. So when it comes to the writing process for your essays, I definitely like understand that there's a lot of essays to write, especially supplementals. So, I mean, like personally for BSMD applications, they once had me write like 11 essays in 7 days. It was crazy. So I would recommend finding where you worked best and at what time. So personally, I worked really well inside of like a small dark corner in the library. So I was there for like 6 hours every single day, like writing my essays and like fine tuning them. But that definitely doesn't work for a lot of people. I know that a lot of people really like writing essays at like 2 a.m. So definitely figure out what works best for you. And I hope that you value and like gain something from this lecture as well to be able to help your essays.
Thank you for sharing your writings. They are amazing work. Now, aside from essays, some colleges also will set up interviews, and we will have Jessica to explain more on that.
Definitely. So I personally went through a lot of interviews during the high school application process. So I'm going to be talking about two different processes. First, like regular school interviews, and then BSMD interviews for those that are interested. So regular school interviews, there are two different types. There's informatives and evaluatives. So informatives are to know the college better. So Northwestern especially uses this system where you can basically only contact and get an interview with somebody from Northwestern in the beginning of the application process to kind of help formulate your essays. They kind of let you know like the certain specific like pieces of Northwestern that you can include into your essay, like kind of like they have a really big thing over like a rock. So I feel like getting that kind of interview is really important. Then there are evaluatives, and these are like more formal. So for these kind of interviews, they are like Yale, Harvard, they have like interviews for Duke. And then so make sure you like get there on time, either through Zoom or in person. Make sure you dress professionally, have like a suit or like a very professional dress. And then make sure to also have questions lined up for them. Interviews, they might seem a little daunting at first, but it should really be a conversation between you and somebody else who like kind of has their own experience at the school. So make sure you research the school fully and figure out their different traditions, and what really makes them special. For example, Yale really likes their residential colleges. It's kind of like Hogwarts. So they kind of like really value that. So make sure you ask your interviewer how is their experience in the residential colleges. And also, these interviews kind of come sporadically throughout after you submit your Common App. So make sure to check your spam email, and don't stress out if you haven't been offered one. A lot of them are just based off of availability of alumni and like the alumni network in your area. Also, I would highly recommend creating a new email for college applications because you're going to need a new email for college anyways. Definitely, it really tries and like minimizes you losing or like forgetting to do an interview because like your email gets lost within the spam. Also, not all colleges have interviews. So like don't stress out too much. For BSMD interviews, it's a completely different story. Once again, a BSMD is like of like a fast track. Sometimes there's like instead of like 8 years of like undergrad plus medical school, it's like 6 years or 7 years. And it's like a guaranteed medical school spot. So there's three types of interviews for this, and I went through all of them. So there's the traditional, the MMI, and the group interview. So traditional is very similar to the regular school interviews, but you have to have like a resume ready just in case. And then also be prepared to answer high yield questions like why do you want to be a doctor? What's your biggest strength? What's your biggest weakness? And then there are MMI interviews, which are called multiple mini interviews. And these are basically ethical questions that they ask you. So they would ask like, oh, how would you handle a patient who's a Jehovah's Witness? So make sure that you're like extremely prepared and like have your ethical pillars down. Make sure you like really understand the four pillars of medicine, which are like autonomy, beneficence, non-maleficence, and justice. So that you can kind of use those values to guide how you're able to answer the questions. They're just like a few minutes per station with new interviewers. And I would highly recommend mock interviews for this type of interview. You really don't know what you're getting into. And if your first type of like this interview is like on the spot, it's like really difficult. So definitely feel free to reach out for like mock interviews with me. And then there's group interviews, which are basically you're like a group of like 8 students, and you can go through like ethical case studies, like physical tasks, like building a tower, problem solving, making a slides, like discussing healthcare topics like accessibility. So it really shows like how you're able to work on a team because in the medical system, you're really working on a team not only as a physician, but also with like PAs and medical assistants and nurse practitioners. So definitely, they're just trying to figure out how you work on a team for that kind of interview.
Thank you for all of your insights, Jessica. Now for our final topic, last but definitely not least. What do our speakers wish they knew earlier? Let's start with Olivia.
Yeah, so I had a few things that I definitely wish I knew earlier. They would have helped me not only just prepare for college, but also the application process. First of all, for the actually writing essays, start earlier than you think you need to. I definitely did not start as early as I should have, and that made it a lot more stressful for me during the winter break when most of the regular applications are due. So definitely start planning, start drafting, and start writing. Um, maybe even late junior years to the entire summer from junior to senior year. Just spend as much time as you can during that time preparing just so you don't stress yourself too much when it comes closer to the deadline. Additionally, this is also true for rec letters. Like Minjun said earlier, not all teachers will let you talk about, like, ask for rec letters until a specific time during the school year. For example, at Troy High, the English teachers are a little stricter about how many rec letters they'll take, but you definitely want to start thinking about that and planning it out beforehand. And you can always ask your teachers, hey, when's a good time to ask about rec letters, or can I ask you for rec letter for college applications as soon as possible. I was lucky that most of my rec letters were the same ones I used for my summer applications for SSP and things like that. But it's definitely something you want to get done as soon as possible, just to, again, decrease the amount of stress because not all teachers will be able to write you a rec letter, and you want to make sure you have time to come up with a backup if you're not able to get your first choice for a rec letter. Additionally, you want to make sure you aren't choosing classes or extracurriculars based only off of what you think colleges will want to see. Not only will plenty of other people be doing this, so you won't be standing out, but you're also not going to be very engaged in those activities. You're not going to be having a fun time, and that's just going to lower the amount of impact you might be making as well. Instead, I think it's best to find things that you're super passionate about and find ways to connect that to whatever academic goal or whatever major you want to do. For example, if you're really into art, but you want to do a like major in chemistry, find a way to connect those and see how like two are related. Just because colleges really like to see that creativity, they like to see new ways where majors can be connected to different hobbies or topics. And not only will you be actually engaged in those activities because they're things that you're actually interested in, but you're going to have a more unique topic to talk about in your essays and in your application. The third thing is to make a profile with the main characteristics that you want to highlight for each college before you even start essays or supplementals or anything like that. That just makes sure that whatever you're giving the college gives a full idea of who you are to colleges because these colleges don't know anything about you and you want to make sure you're covering all the main aspects. For example, are you super good at leadership? What topics are you super interested in? What activities have really impacted you, just making sure that you can paint a full picture. So when you're writing essays, you can make sure you're covering all of those topics. You're having a more successful and more well-rounded application. And finally, do research. I believe Minjun covered this earlier as well, but do research into specific programs, not just like the school ranking or major programs. So you want to look at, for example, for me, I looked a lot into specific research groups led by specific professors and specific courses and seminars and things like that to really narrow down what schools I wanted to apply to. Because for me, at least, I wanted to focus my research on gravitational waves, so that's a very specific field in astrophysics, and not all colleges have research into that, or they don't always have the resources available to do that kind of research. So just narrowing down based off of the specific interests you have and the specific resources a college might offer you can really make it easier to cut down on the number of applications you're writing, as well as make your applications more pointed on why this specific college.
Yeah, absolutely. And we know that college is a big thing that's kind of looming over everyone. And there's times where you think you really want to be structured. You want everything to line up at this date, at this time. You want to get all this done by this time. But in reality, give you some very real advice here. That doesn't happen as much as you'd like it to. And that's completely okay. You don't need to always stick to the plan. I had this really grand schedule, like I was going to get an essay done every 2 days or every day or something like that. That did not happen with the busyness of senior year. I was wrapping up my EE. For those in the IB know that that's like a pretty big project to take on. A lot of the essays got pushed back, and I have to admit, a lot of them were written during winter break. But at times, I do look back and think, okay, that might have been helpful, just because in that span of 2 weeks your mind is so engaged in your own life and reflecting upon yourself by writing these essays. Every single essay you write is going to be a little better than the next, a little better than the next. And you're just going to be in that mindset. It's kind of hard to get into that mindset, take a break for a week, come back, try to write another one, not really fully engaged. And then, and then at the end, you're going to go back, read those essays and think, this is complete. This does not complete who I am as a person. So that's something that you might want to take into consideration. You might not want to have those large gaps in between. If it works for you for sure. Another big thing that looking back after results have come out, I would say the biggest thing is making that cohesive story. For a lot of the schools that I applied, or at least the essays that I wrote a little earlier on, I wasn't exactly set on what path I wanted to take. Was that medicine? Was that research? What am I going to go into? And so this is kind of noted in your Common App in the beginning when it asks you what your prospective career was. I put in physician, but then some of my essays didn't talk about being a physician at all. And some of them did, but then, they didn't really connect together. But towards the end, I was able to actually streamline what I wanted to be. And even for this moment, if that's not something you're 100% sure in, just go with it for now. See if you can discover your passions for it. See if you can, if what you've been doing makes sense in that field. So if you want to go into medicine, don't mark physician and then talk about being a biomedical engineer. They're gonna kind of see right through it. They're gonna be like, okay, this person just wants to get into medical school, doesn't want to actually contribute to that biomedical research field. So kind of choose a path, or at least be specific if you want to do both, like the MD, PhD. And yeah, consider how your activities align with the major that you're applying for. I'm going to talk a little bit about the video interview or the video supplemental that some schools offer. For Brown, it's a big one. They don't offer actual in-person interviews or online interviews. You have to make a 2-minute video that kind of you have free reign and you can talk about yourself. You can show whatever it is that you do. You can walk through a routine. I didn't know about that until it was almost too late. So I definitely scrambled to put one together. Was it very high quality, like the ones you see on YouTube, where it's like, oh, this person's almost gonna go into like a film major, so their 2-minute video is just a spectacular piece of work? No, it wasn't. But it was just very real. It was my life. It showed the more important parts of me and why that mattered. So yeah. And also, finally, like, don't give up hope. You see all these profiles online. Maybe you guys look too much into Reddit, A2C, Quora, any of those forums. You're gonna see some pretty accomplished people out there. They're gonna have like ISEF, RSI, USABO, like, and you're just gonna be like, okay, how am I gonna compare to these people? I don't have a shot. But that was kind of my position. I had some good awards. I had strong ECs, not the strongest ECs, nothing insanely spectacular. But it's just how you put all that together. Obviously, you do need a strong foundation. You need to go out, put yourself out there for some awards. But it's how you put yourself together in the essays at the end of the day that tie it together. Why you are going into the path that you have worked for the last 4 years.
So now I'll be talking about what I wish I knew. So first of all, people really glamorize the second semester of high school or like of senior year, and I really was like looking forward to it. But unfortunately, it isn't as relaxed as most people make it seem like. You of course have to keep up your grades. A lot of schools they have like different policies. Look into it. But like if you get like a certain amount of B's or if you get like a C or something like that, in your senior year and it doesn't match with your previous record of like academic success, they can rescind you. So make sure you keep up your grades. And then also focus on your extracurriculars. Personally, in my second semester, I was really focused on Science Olympiad and like I worked a lot on that. I managed to like do a lot of like activities with my team. I really enjoyed it. So make sure to figure out which extracurriculars you love, prioritize them, and then like do it. You have the time. And then also for BSMD interview supplements and rounds, you would be surprised about how many rounds a school can go through. Personally, like my like application was read like 4 times for a specific school. Like there's a lot of rounds you have to go through. So they can extend until April. So like while IB Day is like near the end of March, I had like still didn't get my decisions until like the very end of April, which is crazy. So you still have to be like really focused and still work on your applications during that time if you're going the BSMD route. Otherwise, chill, relax. And also you never know where you're gonna end up. Personally, I wasn't like super secured on the idea of a BSMD university. And I've had to reject a lot of like my dream universities for this BSMD program that I absolutely love right now. So make sure you like have an open mind, make sure you like know like what you're getting into. Also only apply to schools that you would actually consider going to. Personally, I looked at my safety schools and like if I wasn't going to choose like an out-of-state school over my safety school, I didn't apply to it. Just like adds extra work on top of you, and if you already have so many essays, it's like not worth it. So make sure you figure out what your safety schools are, and then how like the other schools like rank up to it. Also advocate for yourself. So you can send like a letter of continued interest or an update letter to the different universities. I definitely did that. I did that during like mid-January, like February, or sorry, not mid-January, like February, like March-ish. Once I got like more awards and like more activities and more events, I definitely like emailed and like uploaded it into my portal the new things that I'm doing since my submission of my application. I feel like that kind of like shows interest, and it also shows that you're still continuing to do hard work even though you've already applied to college. Also that's really important for interviews, and definitely like if you guys have like any other questions, you can reach out to me. Like after the Q&A, like my email is gonna be there. Definitely we can set up a call and then like I can discuss about anything else. So yeah.
Thank you, Jessica, and a huge thank you to all of our speakers for sharing such valuable insights and guidance to help us prepare for our college applications. We truly appreciate the time and thought you've put into your presentations, and we'll be sure to put your advice to good use. Now we'll be moving on to our Q&A session.
Please feel free to continue submitting any questions or concerns, and we'll share them with our speakers. Your questions can be directed to a specific person or asked more generally, and we'll do our best to make sure each person is addressed. Just a reminder that the Q&A function is right next to the raise hand icon, and you can choose to ask questions anonymously or with your name. The speakers will take turns answering your questions.
Our first question is, how would you sequence your AP courses or IB courses and prioritize SAT, ACT prep? Olivia, would you
Yeah.
like to? Oh,
I
sorry.
can start with that. For me, I didn't take the ACT, I only took the SAT, so I can't speak on studying for that. But for the SAT, I focused most of my studying just in the summer since I took it late. I believe I took it in the October of junior year. But I think what really helped me manage both APs and SAT studying during the school year is that a lot of for example, for English, a lot of the stuff they learn in AP English is similar to how you would go about the English section in the SAT. So I think just finding ways to compare the two and finding similarities really helps you just cut down on some of the time you need. Other than that, a lot of it is just time management. You have to plan out like how much time you want to spend on studying for APs versus SAT on a specific day or for a week or something. Or for me personally, I did it. Most of my studying for SATs was on Khan Academy, so I was like, okay, this week I'm going to get one practice test done, and then the next week I will read this chapter on a prep book or whatever. And then for APs, obviously we have schoolwork and then additional studying during AP season. So I think it's just a combination of finding similarities between the two and then a lot of time management during the school year.
I think I can touch on the ACT. I would highly recommend everybody take both the SAT and the ACT. Now with the digital exams, they're completely different. Like I know that the ACT has science, but now they're transitioning out of it, a little odd. But personally, I kind of really enjoyed how the ACT was like kind of similar to the paper version of the SAT. The reading passages are like kind of like a lot longer and it's like more fast paced. So I would definitely have like a stopwatch and time yourself. I feel like that was like one of my biggest pieces of advice when studying for the ACT. Also, like those practice exams, they're like almost all publicly available, and you can see like a lot of the questions are like almost the exact same. Also for like the science section, if you're struggling on that, then like learning simple like science concepts in like physics or like biology or chemistry really helps speed up the process. And definitely just like a lot of practice exams, I wouldn't buy like a ton of like Kaplan books or like Princeton review books. You don't really need that. Just like practice exams and like do some like every single week.
Thank you for answering that question. Our next question is specifically for Jessica. How do you choose between BSMD or BSDMD or DDS and the traditional 4+4 college model? What are some pros and cons, as not every school offers these programs? How would you choose?
Definitely. So, I personally applied to 12 pre-med schools as well as 12 BSMD schools. So I know the struggle of picking between the two. In case people were wondering, like DMD is like dentistry and it's like the direct program into the School of Dentistry compared to like the School of Medicine. So personally, I really considered my like commitment into medicine. Don't apply to a BSMD if like you're still like very wary and like wondering whether or not you really want to go into medicine because you don't want to sign that contract and be locked in and then realize that you like computer engineering. So definitely your commitment to it. But I think that the BSMDs really offer like so many unique opportunities that you wouldn't be able to get otherwise. Personally, my program allows me to not take the MCAT. I only need to like have like a 3.7 GPA by the end of junior year. So I don't need to like completely make sure I have a 4.0 all the time. And the only other requirement is like having 40 clinical hours of like volunteering like during each semester, which is like totally doable like compared to like the hundreds and hundreds of hours that you would have to put in otherwise. Also, you can like basically like not have a gap year, and now it's so absolutely common to take like 2 or 3 gap years to even be able to apply to medical school. Also like personally in my program, like the medical school is like really, really good. So I think that getting that like extra early spot is really essential. And I think that BSMDs have a lot of things to offer. So I really hope that more people kind of like learn more about them, but definitely compare them to like your other options. And if like financial aid is an issue, there are some BSMDs that like gave me like full merit, like scholarships and like full rides. So it's definitely an option. And like if you have any other questions about those, feel free to reach out to me after.
Thank you, Jessica. And our next question is directed to Mingjun. It says how to initiate the medical therapy opportunities, like through school clubs or orchestra communities.
Yeah, that's a good question. So, I first found out about I wouldn't even call it a program. It's just part of a regular volunteering system at just Trinity Health Oakland. There was someone that I knew who was playing some music at the chapel in the hospital. And so I was like, okay, this sounds cool. I don't really want to restock linen or anything like that. So might as well go there and just see what it's all about. So, if there isn't like a specific music therapy program, well, I think now there is one at Trinity, but for other hospitals that might be more near to where you live, you might be able to just kind of start that program off. A lot of hospitals do have pianos or a chapel where you can kind of set up an instrument and play. You would obviously have to connect through like a volunteer system. You can't just kind of go there randomly and start playing. But once you kind of get into that, I would say it's definitely a rewarding experience. You get to meet all types of people. There was actually one transporter at Trinity who played the piano. So whenever I met him during my volunteering times, we would just start jamming together, just improv sessions, take song requests. When he wasn't around during the summer, I used to go up to the floors. I went into some patient rooms, played at some hallways, and I think my favorite part was just the flexibility. I didn't have to play this type of music. I didn't always have to do I was able to kind of go wherever I wanted at, but reasonably, and just share what I'm feeling and kind of resonate what the patients, the staff are also feeling there. So I'd say that bit of personalization was definitely a good experience. And in terms of how to get into it, just email the hospital. It wasn't really through a school or anything like that. So yeah.
Thank you.
Oh,
Sorry.
So the next question is, for early decision, do you need to decide the major during your application? And if you do get accepted, are you able to change it?
I can probably talk a little bit about this. I didn't apply early decision to any schools, but I do believe it varies based off of the school, just on their own structure of whether they want you to declare before you get in or not. So if it's just based off of like it should be the same as like whatever the regular decision process would be like. So if they want you to declare your major once you get in, like with your admissions, then you like want they it'll be oh my God, sorry. So if they want you to declare it when you get your acceptance and stuff like that, then it'll be the same for when you're doing ED. Um, but for some schools, if they have a relatively lenient program, like they just let you choose like LSA, engineering, things like that, and then once you're at school, maybe at the end of maybe at orientation or a few months after you accept your admission, then they let you choose. It's all just based off of the specific school. Like I believe Columbia just has you choose with your admissions, but again, all the details can be found on the college's site. If you just go onto that college site for admissions, they'll have all that information there. If you can't find it, there's always a Q&A section where you can look for more information.
Thank you. And the next question is, how many colleges did each of you apply to?
I applied to 15 total.
Thank you for answering that question. This is to Mingjun directly, since the student is at an IB school. This person would like to know how course selection worked as students transition from the MYP program to the DP program. Specifically, what DP courses can one choose between and what classes are required?
Yeah, so that's a good question. Some schools are more structured and some schools are less structured. So really the details are something to consult your school counselor about. But generally, if you are going through the full IB program, you're going to be taking classes in pretty much all of the core subjects for your next 2 years in the DP program. That's usually a language. For our school, there was French, Spanish, and German. I ended up sticking with French, which was definitely fun. Not as fun to do listening tests, but still fun nonetheless. Um, in terms of math, usually that course is preset by if you do math 2 or 3 your freshman year. It's kind of hard to switch those math tracks, but you do have the choice to either go math analysis or math applications. Math analysis is more just like the traditional, like, calculus class. Math apps is definitely calculator based. It's has a lot of statistics. It teaches you how to really work with data and be proficient at using the calculator to crunch a lot of values and find statistical correlations. Um, so it's language, math, English. Our school only had literature. It wasn't even literature and composition or anything. It was just literature. So we didn't really have an option. I don't really know what other schools have in terms of that course, but we just kind of had to stick with that. And then there were the sciences. We had to take one science, so that like the first one was biology. But then that for the second course, we could have taken econ, DP art, another science. or other course offerings like that. So for me, I just took double science because that's what I was most interested in. I didn't find the other courses to be as appealing, and there weren't that many options. Hopefully your school has more options. I know my school, IA, recently added some, so that's really good to hear that students are able to take courses like psych, global politics, um, things like that. And yeah, that's pretty much it. But I think one thing when you consider your courses is, um, are you going to be interested in taking this for the next 2 years? That's a big thing because you can't do it 1 year and just drop it. Um, that would require some more logistic gymnastics in terms of if you're going to take like an ESS course for a year or anything like that. Um, I would say that you also want to consider your internals and your EE. Your internals are exploration papers they have to do for every single class. Usually they're up to 200, 2,000 words, 2,000, 3,000 words. And even if it's a subject you don't like literature, or maybe it's like history, and you've had no idea how to write a history paper, you're still gonna have to do it. And that's challenging, but it's definitely rewarding because then you'll know how to put your thoughts onto words, even if it's not a subject that you necessarily enjoy. So think about that when you're choosing classes. If it's something that you wouldn't want to actually write a 2,000 word essay on and you just wouldn't do it at all, maybe don't pick that course. I'd say that's the base thing. And final thing is you want to consider your IB exams. That's at the very end of your senior year. Unlike AP, you don't take AP exams after the year you take the class. You take all the IB exams at the end of your senior year. So when a lot of schools were out and they were done, they were having fun, we still had to sit for another like half a month through a lot of exams, had to study a little extra. Some courses are more rigorous than others, like math AAHL or math chem. So if you're taking some of those courses, it might be worth your while to balance it with some less demanding courses, like some of your SL courses. Hopefully that helps.
Okay, thank you. And next question is for Olivia and Jessica. It says like, did you guys take any other second language in school other than Chinese?
I can start. I did not, mostly because I needed to have marketing in my schedule in order to compete in DECA, and I was also taking part in orchestra. And since Troy High only has 6 hours a day, it really limited how many classes we can take, especially if you add on English, science, things like that. So I chose not to do another language because I tested out of Chinese, and that gave me my language credit.
Personally, I was a little different. So other than Chinese, I also took Spanish. So I took 3 years of Spanish and then tested out of Chinese 3, Chinese 4, and then took AP Chinese in senior year. So that's like 6 different language credits, which is a lot more than you need to do. But personally, what I did was that I kind of like overloaded my schedule. So during my summer of my freshman year, I took both Spanish 1 and Spanish 2 through summer courses during that summer. So I definitely took 4. It was a lot of work, but I think that I really found it valuable because I was able to showcase that not only was I good at my native language, even though I'm not great at it, but I could also take another language. And then I took my third my Spanish 3 during my junior year. So I for my first semester I had like a seventh class. So I was able to kind of like add that on top of it and like increase my class rigor. But I do definitely think that if you can try to test out of your language courses, it's definitely a way to get it out of the way.
Thank you for answering that question. The next question is also directed at either Olivia or Jessica. They asked, they noticed that you had a lot of AP classes your senior year, but they're asking what are the reasons you would still take AP classes in senior year because by then the AP exams you would already be accepted in a school. So what's the point of taking it in 12th grade?
I can start with this question. For part of it, it's because colleges like to see that you're consistently challenging yourself each year. If you're taking a bunch of APs, sophomore and junior year, but all of a sudden you have no classes, no AP classes in senior year, colleges are going to notice that and they're going to be like, oh, that's very interesting. We don't think you're pushing yourself as much, or you're only pushing yourself to look good for colleges instead of actually wanting to challenge yourself. So you do want to show that you enjoy that challenge and you are consistently pushing yourself. Another part of it, for at least for me, was a lot of the APs I took in senior year were on the easier side, but they were also in topics I was actually interested in taking, but I didn't have the time to prioritize in earlier years because I wanted to focus on things like physics or chemistry. So I took the opportunity to take classes that were APs, but also things that I want to explore a bit just because they were interesting to me.
Thank you. Another question is, how did you face burnout and how many colleges should you apply to based on your opinion?
I think I can answer this. Burnout is definitely so real. You have like a lot of different things, you know, classes, extracurriculars, you have your like tests. I think that after like a really big exam or something, like give yourself a break. Like go take a good nap. Get yourself some ice cream. Have a good time. Also like don't try to take yourself too seriously. It's okay. Like one exam is not gonna kill you. I feel like a lot of people are like, oh, make sure you get like all fives on your AP exams. Like your colleges are gonna hate you if you don't get it like all fives. I didn't get all fives. I'm like nowhere close to getting all fives. And I still got into like many top tier like pre-med schools and like BSMD programs. So don't worry about that. Yeah.
Thank you. And our next question is where and how to find a volunteer opportunity to work as a medical receptionist.
I think this is targeted towards me. Okay, what I did is that in my freshman year, I like called up my nearest medical office, and that was like maybe 2 minutes away from my house. And I was like, "Hey, can I volunteer for you?" When you're sending out these kind of like volunteering like cold emails, make sure you're including your resume and how many hours you can dedicate. Basically, if you can only dedicate 5 hours, it's not worth to train you because like you're not gonna give them enough benefit for them to like have the cost of training you. So I was like, oh, I'm gonna work there for 100 hours and like I promise to be really dedicated. And that allows me to like really, I like did an interview and then I was able to get like the position. I definitely think that cold email is extremely important. So like a lot of like research opportunities at like universities, that's another question. Is like you can definitely just cold email different places. And then also medical receptionist, it doesn't require like any like certification, but also I would oh my God, I would highly recommend you guys look into getting a medical assistant certification. That's like a CCMA course that you can take online or in person. I personally got my certification, and that allows you to get like higher pay and also more clinical interactions. So, highly recommend.
Thank you. One last thing before we wrap up. Just for every single all the speakers, what high school did you go to?
I
I
went
can
to,
start.
oh, sorry, go ahead.
Thanks. I went to Troy High School.
I went to IA, Oakma campus, Go Phoenix.
I went to Troy High School as well.
Thank you, speakers, for answering for your answers. That concludes our Q&A session for today. If you have any additional questions or concerns, or if your question wasn't answered, please feel free to reach out to our speakers directly at the emails listed here, or contact us at ylc@myefound.org. We will give a minute for people to take a picture of this slide.
And that brings us to the end of today's seminar. A big thank you again to all of our speakers for sharing their journeys and to all of you for joining us and contributing such thoughtful questions. We hope you're leaving with valuable insights to to guide you in your own path ahead. We also want to wish our amazing speakers the very best of luck as they begin their college journeys. You've inspired us all today. Wishing everyone success in the future, and we look forward to seeing you in our next event.